So I am going to start my first weekly mailbag, and it will air live on Twitch every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. my time. And I received a fair amount of questions, and like this is what my shit looks like. I got a fair amount, but so I like copy pasted it over to Word so I could protect people's email addresses just in case. So the first question. One of the first questions I got was, Silencer has been confirmed to be on Captain's Mode next week, or this week, since this will be answered on the 12th, which is today, for Tournament version. And this was copy-pasted from patch notes. Enabled Silencer in Captain's Mode for the latest version, and he will be enabled in Tournament version the following week. Do you think he will be chosen and or banned frequently in the competitive scene, and do you think Last Word needs to be tweaked / nerfed as it currently is? Thanks for all the great stuff you do. And let me just make a game real fast. So Silencer, I played a lot in Dota 1, and I played him a decent amount in Dota 2. Like, I played him just many, just huge amounts of hours. And his third skill changing from a passive to an active, I think makes him a lot stronger and more higher skill cap, because you actually need to use his ability instead of just like standing there and just being annoying. So I actually played him, let me see how many times I've played him. I have played him 33 times in Dota 2, 29-4. I have like around 90% win rate with him, but I don't think it's because I'm really good with the hero. I think it's because the hero is broken. And I do expect him to be like not like a top tier ban like Wisp and Bat, but I still expect him to be like right below that in that area. Like not the top like 5 or 6 heroes in the pool, but maybe like rank 7 through like 13 around that area in competitive. He is really good in solo mid. Actually, I played the solo mid matchup a lot of times with Silencer against a lot of heroes. I played against Quap, TA, a lot of the regular solo mids. I believe I solo against Bat before, and he can manage all of the matchups, including Magnetar. So one thing why I expect him to see him in competitive is because he's really good at winning his lane, and that's what a lot of teams focus on, is winning their lane. Even if you do, I like the 1-1-1 build because it's flexible, but he has an orb, so you can harass. The only other hero that has an orb in competitive that's popular in middle is Obsidian Destroyer, and he doesn't even skill it until later. But the orb harass is very strong. Like, he can actually trade harass with Queen of Pain because of his last hit. And his Glaze Wisdom. He's like okay base saver, just not as spectacular, but it's decent as a ranged intelligence hero. And then he can, if she Shadow Strike and decides to trade last hits, you can just Glaze Wisdom and Curse if she decides to blink. But Curse is really underrated. It's 75 mana, and if a Queen of Pain blinks, it costs her 60 mana, so you're pretty much using 75 of your mana to burn 60 of hers, which is actually pretty good, because you don't need Curse to escape. Like, if you're running away, you don't really need mana, but if Quap without blink, that's just like primary kill target, and that's really good. Also, everybody knows about Global Silence, it's just ridiculously strong, especially against Enigma and Bane Elemental. 4 seconds Global Silence that you can't really do anything about, especially if you have a channeling skill. Like, if you BKB and cast Global, you'll still get silenced. So Enigma's, there's no way a good silencer will let Enigma get a hole off if he's not caught in the hole himself. And same with a Bane Elemental. And he can do that from anywhere on the map, which is why he's so strong. He can help out your silence a lot. As soon as he hits 6, Bane tries to go on somebody, like they try and sleep, and then Kotl charges up his blast, which is actually very common in competitive nowadays. You can just global and interrupt their setup, which is really strong. Or if they're like trying to disrupt setup on somebody with like a call down or anything, pretty much, you can just interrupt it, and it's ridiculous. 140-second cooldown. It recently got buffed, and I expect him to see it in a lot of combo lineups as well. We might see the bring back of Sand King, because you can just get a 2-man stun, and then immediately after you just global silence, and then you channel epi, and you just destroy team fights or side lane ganks, which is really strong. And you don't have to be there. And of course, competitive teams do have the coordination to pull this sort of thing off. Although he is not that good as a carry, if you really want to carry intelligence solo mid, you use Obsidian Destroyer. He doesn't have massive amounts of damage. Glaze of Wisdom does not scale as well as Arcane Orb, and he gets some intelligence, but is nothing compared to how Obsidian Destroyer's ult scales in team fights, or his Arcane Orb scales as he gets more mana. So he's not that kind of role. He's more of like a utility role, and he doesn't like destroy like the mid game if you win early game like Queen of Pain does. Queen of Pain, if you get a good start, you're going to destroy the side lanes and pretty much win your team the game mid-game. He's not that type of hero, so he's like kind of a niche utility hero, but I still expect him to be very, very strong. And do you think Last Word needs to be tweaked or nerfed as it currently is? I think it's decent. It's 150 damage at level 1, which is one of the highest damage nukes in the game at level 1, aside from, like, let's see, Gyrocopter, Rocket Barrage, and like Coddle Blast. But other than very few spells, 150 damage at level 1 is really, really strong. Most spells like scale like 75, 150, 225, 300, but Last Sword actually has unusual scaling, but it does have a very, very long cooldown to compensate for that. But 150 damage burst at level 1 is very, very strong, and if they play too aggressively on you, you can just punish them heavily for it. And on top of that, you force a lot of heroes to get BKB. You can BKB out of the global, but if you already BKB'd, you still get silenced. Also, you can use Yules to kind of dispel the silence off yourself, but you force heroes to get BKB. Queen of Pain is not going to do anything in team fights if she doesn't get a BKB. You can just Last Word her and then global, and then you silence her for like 10 seconds, pretty much, which is insane. 10 seconds on a hero that actually relies on her spells is absolutely ridiculous. And I keep on bringing up Queen of Pain because she's one of the most common solo middles, I believe. And same with like Magnetar. If you like Last Word him and then global, then he won't be able to RP for about 10 seconds or so if you wait 2 seconds before you cast a global. And of course, 10 seconds will make or break a team fight. So I think he definitely will be used. We will see him in tournament mode, I believe, this week. So we will see if my predictions are accurate. But I do believe he will be seen a lot, and will be like not in the first 4 bans, but he will be picked in that first pick phase or banned in the second phase. That's where I expect him to see the most. Although he may skip down to like the last, like the 4 and 5 picks for each team. So thank you for that question. And the second one is, let's see. Second question is, this question is related to farm-dependent carry heroes and their decisions in the last 2/3 of the game. I feel it's mostly true that in the early game, especially the first night, for a 2-1-2 lane setup, the carry hero wants to be as near the tower as possible in the safe lane. Once it's past the laning phase, the game changes quite a bit. Depending on the heroes on both sides, teams might continue laning a bit more, start ganking a lot, grouping up to push towers and forcing team fights, etc. What are some things that one position should observe and take into account in making the decision to maintain equilibrium near his tower, or to auto-attack a bit more / spam spells to push a wave out and pressure opponent's towers? How is reading the opponent's intentions best done as the carry? So I'll just go over that first. So like a lot of people, when they see me as a farmer, I like push out the lane a lot, which is strange because a lot of people don't do that. They're like, well, I need to keep this wave over here so that the guy can't get experience. He like has to come away from his tower to get experience, and because it leaves you vulnerable to ganks if you have to push up further, right? If you're like right here, as opposed to right here, you're more vulnerable to ganks because it's further away from your tower. You don't have the protection of it, and your teammates can't TP in as fast and react. And that is definitely true for like the first, like the laning phase of the game, for the first like 5 or 6 minutes. You want the wave to be just right here all the time, just like right here in this area, because your like supports can zone out the offlane guy. If it's like an offlane Windrunner or Darkseer, Beastmaster, whatever it is, usually not a Bounty Hunter in lower level games because people have trouble zoning out. But regardless, you should still be able to zone out people and make them sit at their tower and wait for it to come all the way to the tower to get experience. And that is very, very important to static farm, as it's called in this area. Static farm means deny a half and just pull the creep wave as close as you can to your tower by only going for last hits on creeps, on enemy creeps, and denying at half. And that's just an effort to go over here. And then especially with creep pulling, it should be really easy to keep the wave like around here for most of the game. But as the game develops, you need to change your playstyle based on what is going on in the game. And that is what this question is about. As the one hero, what are you supposed to do past that initial laning phase? So the first thing I want to say is, if you're just free farming the lane and nobody is there to contest you, you're not getting the most out of your lane by just static farming over here, because you're only farming 4 creeps every 30 seconds. That's the maximum amount of creeps there are, aside from siege creeps, or when there are actually 5 creeps in a wave as opposed to 4. But in general, you're only getting 4 creeps a wave, and you're not maximizing your farm by doing that. Like, let's say everyone has just left bottom lane. You're alone because they're like, okay, I'm getting zoned out, I can't do anything, so they decide to jungle or gank mid or gank top, or whatever it may be. If you're just here farming by yourself, and there's like 9 heroes on the other side of the map, and you're a hero that can't do shit early game, like Faceless Void maybe until he's level 6, or like a Phantom Lancer, you're not getting the most out of your lane by just static farming. Although you're getting decent farm, 8 creeps a minute is not that bad, you could be doing more. You could be pushing the tower so that your team gets a farm, and that if they trade unfavorably in a 4v5 fight, let's like say they get 2-0'd in a fight, at least they get a tower. Your team comes out ahead on gold on that trade, but they get experience, so it's about an even trade. And if you just get 8 creeps a minute and the opponents like 2-0 your team as they're 4v5ing, then that's a really bad trade. You don't want that to happen. And they're likely to like keep up the pressure, keep trading like that, and then get your tower. But if you get this tower, it forces them to like they feel threatened. They don't have that much control over the map. They like immediately like lose this much of the map, and then now all of a sudden it's like bottom lanes here is your area of control, and then all of a sudden it extends over here, and they can't control the rune, they can't control the ancients, they can't control Roshan, and as soon as this tower falls, your team gets a lot of gold, you get a lot of gold, and you can farm neutrals in the meantime, and you're maximizing your gold farm by being able to do this. Instead of 4 creeps a minute, 4 creeps every 30 seconds, you can farm this wave, and then you can like creep pull, you can stack, you can use your Midas, and not miss out on the lane farm. You can get the tower, you can do all 3 of the things, get the tower neutral and get farm in the lane, and you're maximizing your potential as a farmer by doing other things besides keeping your lane static. And that's only if people are under other lanes, because the wave position doesn't matter. If you're free farming and no one's bothering you and no one's supporting you, it doesn't matter where the wave is, because no one's getting the experience on the opposite team. So who cares if the wave dies at their tower or right here or to neutral creeps? It doesn't matter because no one's there. So that's only if everyone else on the other side of the map. I would just recommend not static farming and just power farming. I call it power farming because I'm just like constantly pushing out this wave, auto attacking the creeps down, and then having my creep suicide in their tower. And as soon as that happens, I like rotate to the jungle and then creep pull, and then go back to lane of farm, and then I go back and finish these neutrals off, and then I call it power farming because I'm getting more than 4 creeps every 30 seconds, which is really, really important as your carry. You want to farm as much as possible so you can make an impact as early as possible in the game. But if other things are happening, then you need to play a little bit differently. Your supports need to know where the hot spots on the map are. For example, if they keep ganking your top lane or keep going to your mid lane, you need to have wards appropriately. Like you need to have a ward over here so you can see if people TP on the tower, or people rotate from the jungle or from top lane or just from mid lane itself to try and gank your middle. And this area is a real big hot spot, and that's where your ward needs to be so that your team can tell where the action is going on, and so your farmer knows what to do in response. Like if they're all ganking mid at the same time, you also want to put pressure on their tower and force them to choose in between ganking the solo mid or defending their tower. And if they do one, they're going to lose a tower, and if they defend a tower, then they waste their time by running all the way over here and then having one person rotate all the way bottom, and they don't have the manpower mid to continue to gank. You need to force the opponent to make these sort of decisions, trade-off. They have to have some sort of opportunity cost for ganking. And if you're just like farming over here, of course they're not going to gank you, because it's like you have this like fortress of farm like in this area where people will just TP if you get ganked, and they're not going to gank you. They're going to gank the weaker spots on the map, and that's where the wards need to be set up. They need to be set up like over here so that you can see if they go from the jungle or if they come from the rune, or like over here if they TP on tower and just try and circle from behind. Your supports need to be aware of this so that the one person can make the most informed decision possible. And like if they're ganking bottom a lot, if it's like a Phantom Lancer and they have a Bounty Hunter and they just keep pressuring this Phantom Lancer so he can't get his fast defusal, then you need to have wards over here so you can see them coming from tower, and then you need to have a ward right here so that you can see them coming from every direction. You can see them come from all 3 directions. You can come from here, or from here. And with those 2 wards set up, you can see everything coming. And then with the supports having that in mind, your one player can play accordingly, and they can just free farm right here if they see people coming, and then just back off like 600 range, right back to his tower if he feels threatened. Or if no one's over here, if no one shows himself over here, here, and here, that means they're off ganking somewhere else, they're farming, or that they're smoked. and it's a very low probability that there's smoke. Sometimes you just have to eat smoke ganks because you just can't always be constantly feared of smoke ganks. But either they're like farming in this area on the map, or they're ganking top lane, or they're ganking mid lane, and then your carry can just like push out to the tower in response, and again force them to make bad decisions. Like if they're choose to like walk from these neutrals all the way down to bottom just for like one creep wave, just so you don't get the tower, that's a good trade for you. You're wasting a lot of their time, and it's kind of in the one person's hands to do that, but he can't do that without the correct information. So it also depends on like how the supports play and how they rotate and things like that. And if you're a safe lane farmer that has the potential to kill, for example, Nakes, for example, Phantom Lancer, if he has sufficient mana, then you need to have offensive wards set up. So if you're not in a defensive position, you can be in an offensive position and even have a ward behind your tower if you need to, so that if they try and come gank you, like if they come gank with 3 people, you can just retaliate with 4 people. Or if they just have one person, you just bring in one support and you can kill him. But a lot of this depends on your support and how they play and the vision that you have and how the game's going. If you're in like a really defensive position all the time, you don't want to be out in these neutrals. You don't want to be more than like 2 screens away from your tower. You want to be like 1 screen away from your tower so that your teammates can TP in. So it just always depends on what sort of position your teammates in, how well your hero can make an impact on early game. And also on top of that, like if you have like wards set up here, and you can see that the gank's coming like before they happen, you have like a lot of time to react, then your carry can like push out a wave or 2 and then just TP to come help. Because that's also one thing that's like pretty hard about playing carry. It's like, oh, when should I fight and when should I farm? And if you don't know who's around the map, then you can't make that informed decision, and you have to like speculate as to whether it is. Everyone's been in that position before, where they're the carry and they TP top to try and go to a team fight, and then nothing happens, and they're like, well, fuck, why did I TP top? I could just be farming bottom the whole entire time. And it's like completely useless for them to do that, because he didn't know that there was only one of them there and they were sitting back at the tower. He didn't know that there were 4 of them there and you guys only have 2, and he just like made the wrong decision because he didn't have enough information to give him. It might be his fault, could be the support's fault, but the important point is that he's missing out on what he could be doing bottom. But as a one person, is always like it's just always a toss up as to what you're supposed to do. It always depends on how farmed the enemy carry is. Like, can you do you need like your BKB to fight? Do you have Chronosphere off cooldown? Are you like anti-mage and you really need your Battle Fury and Treads before you can clean up in fights? Like it just always depends. And if they have a lot of heroes to shut you down, then like for example, if you're an SA, you really need your refusal against a bounty hunter so you can purge track off yourself and so you don't die, or you can get off really easy solo kills and supports by just purging them inside the smoke cloud. And that's an okay situation to farm, but a lot of heroes can do a lot of things before they get their like core item, and people think that diffusal is a core item in SA, which it is, but that doesn't mean that he can't do stuff without it. I've seen a lot of SAs just do a lot of work just with power treads and magic wand and maybe a pro man shield. So just trying to keep that in mind, that it always just depends on how the flow of the game is going, but a lot of it is dictated by vision, and vision is really underrated, which is why I always insist on having wards in middle. And even as a 2-player, which I usually am because I play solo mid with a hero that requires a decent amount of farm, you still need good vision around the map so you can make informed decisions. Like if there's like 3 heroes sitting mid, I'm just going to farm neutrals, right? And if I don't know that that's happening, I might just be positioning myself for a really bad gank, but I can't make those sort of decisions if I don't have the right vision around. Okay, and I think that's it. I think I answered those 2 questions, and I think those were 2 pretty good questions. Like how's one player supposed to play, and one more like relevant to the competitive scene, and the most recent patch notes, which is how is Silencer going to affect the game. So that is it for this week's mailbag, and again, I'm looking for like more questions along those sort of lines, more like in-depth and situational things, or more recent things that happen in the game, like, oh, how is Dusa going to affect blah blah blah, because she just got recently implemented to the game. And those aren't questions that you can like Google and find an answer to, which is what I'm looking for. But thanks everybody for watching, and that will conclude my first Merlini's mailbag.